Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. We are tenure-track faculty members in the sciences, working at a primarily undergraduate university in California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss.
Welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. I'm Ruth.
And I'm Claire, and today we're talking about committee work. But first, Ruth, how was your week?
My week was good. I feel like, I think this might be true I'm hearing it from other people, but there's something about kind of coming up on the anniversary of all of this strangeness that it's kind of tough, I'm feeling it. So we've busted out the kind of break in case of emergency, and we're rewatching Firefly, which is like the thing we do when anything huge is happening. So we're in the middle of Firefly, which is very soothing.
Excellent.
And yeah. And then I don't know, lately the girls, like a lot of their drawings involve these really unbelievably adorable fat ponies and fat dragons. But
Interesting.
Just recently I was looking through, I was like, wow, there's so many little round tummied. There's nothing quite like a fat dragon to cheer you up. So, yeah, fat dragons are getting me through at the moment.
How
for
nice.
Sure.
Fat dragons. I'm
going to send you a photo of one of them. And someday, if we ever have our social media game sorted out, I will post a picture someday of one of these fat dragons because they're pretty
sounds
epic.
Great. How
about you? How was your week?
My week was good. I wanted to report in. I've been doing this semester. Fridays are my research day.
Oh,
and
nice.
So, it's been working really great because it's dedicated. Like, I'm not allowed to grade or schedule something on those days aside from research stuff. And yeah, it just really has been helpful for not letting the urgent tasks take over this long-term thing that I want to do of getting all my data quality controlled. So, it's been really nice to be like, no, Fridays are only for that.
That's for me is the big struggle, right? Is the sort of longer term lofty project goals as opposed to, I just want this stuff graded off Canvas so
Totally.
I don't have to think about it. And yeah,
Totally.
I think that's cool to section that off.
And it's been kind of nice, like every Friday I think, well, it'd be nice if I just did this one other thing. But the magnitude of that decision ripples out through the semester, because if it's if it's rigid that this is only research time, then I have much more time than if it becomes flexible. So that helps me stay rigid in realizing that it's not just a tomorrow kind of question, it's a whole semester question.
Yeah. I like when you kind of take away, it sounds weird, but when you take away your own free choice, it's like, it's a good thing though, right? Because sometimes current you can't be trusted and you need past you to have decided something about what you're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, it allows you to be a little more intentional and not just get caught up in the momentary tasks that need to be done,
Well,
yeah.
Sometimes I have this visual, which is maybe more negative than I mean it to, but like a nest full of baby birds that are that's sometimes what just being in our job feels like. Is like,
you gotta feed the research bird and the teaching bird.
Well, yeah, everyone needs something, and they always will. Even if you take Friday off, it's really not take off, but work on your research instead. But
right,
it's not really going to drastically impact.
Totally.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It always feels like you just need to finish these few things, and then you'll be done with the crying birds. But they're always going to be there. You're so right.
Always hungry, man. Always hungry. Yeah.
So, do you have a quote for us today?
I do, and I kind of want to acknowledge how much we've deviated from the original professor sort of thing. But anyway,
we got to mentors at some point. Is this qualifies that still?
Well, I think this lady, I would consider her a professor of knitting.
Oh, okay.
Her name is Elizabeth Zimmerman, and she was born in England, but was an American. She had moved to America, and she wrote these amazing knitting books. I think in the 60s and 70s. But she's just amazing. I think even if I wasn't a knitter, I would still read her books because they're just full of very jolly common sense and
cool.
And so she has a quote that is, "Knit on with confidence and hope through all crises." And I think she is speaking maybe directly in reference to when things go awry with your knitting, but I'm going to interpret it to encompass all crises. So
I love it.
yeah, I think I always forget. I mean, I don't because I knit like daily, but I often forget how much knitting helps me calm down. And I think I think I have talked on here about my epic odyssey with this one cardigan.
Oh, yeah.
Which is breaking my mind apparently. But so I think the next thing I choose to knit is going to be very simple, and I'm going to not be like sweating my brain
great.
when I'm trying to do it. But yeah, I love it.
I love, yeah. What, knit on with confidence? Was that what it was?
So it's let me see here. So it's knit on with confidence and hope through all crises.
I love it. Yeah.
And I think it really applies to anything, whatever your knitting is.
Yes. Yes.
And I imagine playing music would be very like
I guess knitting thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever, like, what is it called when you get in like a flow state where there's like, you're sort of occupied enough mentally that you're not stressing out about your stuff, but you're not.
And then you're really able to be creative and think about how to solve problems and make things happen the way you want them to happen. Mm-hmm. Totally.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah.
Well, great.
Tell me. Okay,
So,
committee work.
Committee work. I thought maybe we could start with a little bit of what is a committee and how does it fit into our job? Because I know when I was applying for this job, everyone said, oh, the things you need in this job are teaching, research, and service. And I was like, what's service? And they said committees. And I was like, how many committees can there be? Like, what? What do you mean?
Dude, same here. Same here. Because like as in my previous role, like the teaching was there and I did do a little bit of research, but I had no concept. Service is such a nebulous term. And then committees also is kind of nebulous too. So yeah.
Totally nebulous. Yeah. So, and I guess I just wanted to say that committees exist at lots of different levels. There's department and then there's college and university committees. And so just some examples, like a new hire committee or a committee to decide who gets this award or a committee to figure out how we're going to do this next step at the university, or a committee to decide what general education requirements there are and see if we need to adjust them. So just all the decisions that need to be made, there's usually a committee for them.
Yes.
Did I forget any categories there, Ruth?
No, I think like, yeah, because it's like department, college, university level, and they are important when you're preparing your tenure file.
Totally.
That you should have some committee work.
Yeah. So what is working for you with committee work? What do you got going on there?
Yes. So my as usual, my working on is longer. Well, it's interesting because our department is very small in physics. So almost every time sometimes when I was writing up my tenure file and my colleagues were like, oh, you're on this committee and this committee. And I was like, was that a committee? I thought that was just us meeting. And they were like, well, yeah, because we're all on every committee because it's sort of small. So in that sense, that's been kind of positive that it just happened by accident. I thought they were just department meetings, but I guess they were committees. So I think I've had really positive experiences on a few.
Okay.
That have been, it's just when it's like one of those things, and I don't think I'm the person who ever contributes to this happening, but when you're on a really effective, well-oiled machine and you're like, ooh, this is really effective and well-oiled, but like I don't necessarily, it's not me that's bringing that, but
okay,
like
You're
I think
it.
We were kind of on a committee. Were we on a committee, or is that what?
I was wondering if that was a committee. So we were on this thing where we were helping develop our new freshman welcome to college class, which maybe was a committee or maybe was just a co-teaching thing. I'm not really sure, but we were developing stuff collaboratively in a very committee-like fashion.
Right, and you were so good at being in charge of that.
Oh, thank you.
And it's sort of funny how I could like appreciate all the things that you did, and then I'm always, because I'm like, oh, she's just really effective at making sure we get things done, while I'm like chatting and trying to derail everyone. Like, so I'm kind of like, I'm like the one who makes things less effective. But so kind of, it's been really good to see what it looks like in action and being effective. So I like that. And then recently I volunteered for a college level committee. Like I think you have to wait and see if you get picked for it. But I'm trying to be braver because I have a lot of hang-ups about committees, which I'll come to later on. So, but don't worry, we'll get there. But I'm kind of volunteering. I'm trying to get over myself and volunteer more.
That's awesome.
So so what about you?
I think it's working to select my committees selectively. I'm reminded of Derek Sivers. His phrase is, if the answer isn't hell yeah, then it's no. You know, you're like, should I be on this committee? And another way that it's phrased by Greg McKeown in Essentialism, if it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no.
Oh my God. I'm writing this down immediately.
I love those phrases. It's very helpful. Hell yeah or no. If it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. So, of course, there are exceptions, and we're a pretty small department, too, and so department committees are sometimes exceptions where something really needs to be done. There's a minimal number of people who could be on this committee. Someone's got to do it, and I don't want to just always pass the buck to other people, so I'm totally down to do it in those cases. But in a broader sense, there are a lot of committees out there. There's a lot of people out there, and it makes sense to me to pick ones that are a good fit for me. So for me, I was on a committee that was the Research, Scholarship, and Creative Activities Committee, which basically helps decide where some of our internal grants go.
Cool.
So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that because I got to read all these proposals that people had and help decide which ones we should fund. So for me, I felt like it was meaningful because I was helping with this thing that I found valuable, and I didn't mind doing the work. I enjoyed reading the proposals and getting a better perspective of proposal writing from that. And another one that I really liked was being on the Outstanding Student Award Selection Committee, where we read through a bunch of nominations of, excellent students and decided which ones would get the award. So, yeah for me, those were good matches, again, because they had the meaningful, I, valued what we were doing, and I didn't mind. I was glad to do the work associated with the committee. So I selecting the committees selectively.
What a cool reflection. And as usual, I feel like as I'm always just flailing around and things happen to me, but I really like that deliberation and like knowing, because something, I don't know why this isn't totally relevant, but I saw a kind of a notice go out from the NSF about something where they were talking about this grant. And then they were like, hey, and if you're not maybe ready to submit one yet, it would be cool to be on the review panel, and then you'll get a better. And I hadn't really thought of it that way, that it would be super helpful and informative.
Totally helpful.
To look behind the curtain and see what's, happening. But I was thinking of you with the RSCA. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just kind of cool to hear what other people, like how you kind of evaluate grants, but also like what are other people saying behind the scenes. And
Totally. Yeah. I think reviewing grants is a huge help for writing grants. So there's also that perk.
Yeah, totally. So I guess I wonder, I mean, I feel like sometimes it can almost be too strategic with thinking about tenure always as the end point, but there's other things, right, that can boost in other ways. So interesting.
And then the other thing I was thinking about is like actually being on the committee and trying to figure out how to make it effective and not take up more time than it needs to, is to think about what goals we have, both like for that day's meeting and also for the whole outcome of the committee, and trying to stay focused on that. So, I think the side conversations and the chatting that happens in the committee meeting is valuable, and it helps us figure out what issues we need to think more about and where we're at, what kinds of things we're thinking about. So then figuring out how to, from that, take the takeaways from those conversations and then direct them towards what are we actually trying to do. Try to, synthesize all the topics from the conversations and then bring them towards the goal of the committee again. I find just trying to keep that in my mind in the committees is helpful.
Well, I think, earlier on, I was on a committee that was humongous and definitely too many cooks sort of situation. And it just was a lot of, it never got out of that beginning bit of maybe gathering everybody's views on things. Mm-hmm. And it just was very disheartening. And it really did, like, everyone just drifted away, you know, and it was, so it's weird. Like, I think there's some thing where some mega tech corporation did this sort of like analysis of what makes group work effective. But one of the things was feeling like your work is meaningful and actually.
Yes.
So even though I'm always trying to derail things, like I really like the sense of accomplishment after a meeting.
Yes.
You're like, oh, we got that done. And that is a thing. Or even, you know, we have 3 more meetings where we'll get this figured out, and it's sort of motivating. But it is hard in the job that we have, being so time poor, to, you know, you really do want to make sure that you feel like you're making progress and things are important.
Yes. Everyone who's at that committee meeting has lots of other things that they could be doing. So we need to make it be a valuable use of everybody's time. And I don't, you know, obviously it can go too far with the derailing conversations, but I don't think they're always something. I don't think that the answer is to minimize them as much as possible, you know, because sometimes those are where we get at the core of the problem somebody's seeing or something like that.
I think it's more like when it's just never crystallizes.
Yes.
Like when it's just sort of, or when it's the scope is so big. It's like, okay, well, we can't deal with that. So can we just.
I agree. So it's very important to like bring it back together to, now that we've had all these ideas, what are we going to do with them? What are our next steps? How do we put it together? What are our conclusions? Yeah, I completely agree. Because if we never get to that stage, then we just had a conversation, but that's it.
Right. Yeah, I'll be back to like wanting there to be rules, because there can, and like you said, like something interesting can come out of those things, and it could, but keeping it effective.
So keeping in mind whether we are going in an effective direction, whether this does seem worthwhile, and then kind of at some point, I think it is worthwhile to say, okay, we've talked about that enough. Let's move on, or I don't know. Yeah. So what are you working on?
I think I haven't really been on enough committees, and I was really nervous because I think when we did our tenure file, I have quite a bit of service in more nebulous sort of club stuff, but not as many official committees, and so I think I'm really scared of the commitment, and I think I definitely and some of that is changing, but especially having smaller children, life is just very chaotic and unpredictable, and kids get sick, and you know, things happen. So I think I was like terrified of having, oh, you're on this committee for a year and it's Tuesday at 3:00 every, you know, whatever that was. It was like a little overwhelming. So I think the things I found myself on have been very short term. Like I did like sort of an award thing, like where you know, people applied for an award and we chose who got it, and that's a kind of like a finite thing. And I think they're all ultimately finite, but some are longer finite than others. So I think that was a thing. And I haven't really gone for things at the university level. And often sometimes we get these calls for committees and they're so acronym ladled, like I don't even know what they're saying. And so I'm just sort of intimidated. I'm like, I don't even actually know what this is about. So.
And it can be hard to know how much of a commitment a committee is, because you haven't done that committee before, and if you don't know much about it, because, you know, like I was on that research one that I was on was a 2-year commitment, but we only met 3 times a year, and we scheduled it when everyone was available, so it really wasn't hard to do in terms of scheduling. So, but I didn't know that when I signed up for it. Yeah, that's very interesting.
And I think I struggle too, again, because even though I'm the derailer, but I struggle with effectiveness sometimes. And definitely, maybe that earlier committee, I was definitely pretty new and did not feel like, I don't know, I just don't know. I struggle sometimes with like if it's not super effective, but then I don't know what my place is, and I don't totally know how to, do you know what I mean? Like
you're
if
not
I'm
sure if you could step up and bring it back on track.
I don't even know if I actually genuinely have those skills, but also like if
sure
I could,
you do.
well, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So I think I just felt really intimidated by the whole thing. So I kind of volunteered for one, and if I get onto it, then I will report back how that went. But yeah, I definitely It's a bit scary. But tell me, what are you working on?
Yeah, well, so we get those emails periodically that say, here are the committees that there's openings on. And I kind of scan through that list and, I'm looking for the clear yeses. And so I kind of just go, no, 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 and then delete the email, which generally I'm totally down with. But I am curious if there are some committees that I don't know would be a good match because I don't really understand what they do. Or there's the alphabet soup acronyms like you're talking about. So I am interested in, what the ones that aren't calling out to me, are there just some keywords that I don't really know what they mean that could be really interesting that I would be interested in serving? So I don't have like a huge fear about that because, of course, there's, lots of other things that I do that I'm not necessarily looking for more committees, but I'm curious. I'd be interested in talking with some people who've served on some of these bigger committees and finding out what it entailed, and then see if any of those spark my interest and seem like maybe I should go for it in a future time,
Well, and it's interesting to me, the ones I've gone on are often because someone else emailed me and said, I think you might be interested in this. And there's like a little bit more context. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
But partly my initial thing is like, if it is alphabet soup, then is that going to be... That feels like a really ineffective way to communicate anyway. So you're kind of like, are they the people?
Sure.
I don't know. But
and there is such, it's a joke about committees being a waste of time, and obviously tons of things get done with committees, but there's also tons of committees that are very time sinky without much getting done. So sure. And obviously we can help contribute to making them be more efficient, but it is something to wonder about, is how much time and how much productivity. Yeah.
And how would you extricate yourself? Say if you went to one meeting and you were like, oh no, absolutely no. And then you're like, oh, like, how do you break up with your committee?
How do you break up with your committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to talk to someone who's already been on the committee, I think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just...
I wonder, is it just like if you find yourself at a loose end and you're like, geez, I haven't been on a committee for like 2 years, maybe I should, then you could shop around a bit.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
But right now it sounds like you have plenty.
Yeah, and like I say, I read through and that's how I found the Research Scholarship Creative Activity Committee, and I said, oh, that does sound like a good match, just reading through. So it totally happens that the keywords do pop out sometimes, and I do think that was a good match. So I'm generally satisfied with the approach. I just am keeping my ear out, I suppose, to other people talking about other committees they're on, or if I hear that somebody's on a committee that I don't know much about, maybe I'd want to chat with them about it just so that I get a better idea.
There's no way of doing this without it all blowing up and being terrible, but I wish there was like some book somewhere of like, oh, here's actually what this committee is like. Like, this one's great. If you just want to show up every week and snooze for the next, like do this one. This is great. And this is a great one if you want a short term.
Oh my gosh. I'm imagining a plot, and it'd be like, on one axis would be like how effective it is, and another axis would be like how easy it is, like time commitment.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's a correlation, right? Like if it's one that you just show up and smile and nod and daydream, but then okay, interesting. Maybe that's going to be our first other project apart from their book.
Oh man.
But you do need that word on the street from people.
Yes.
Like, okay, this would be good. It's low commitment, or this is great because you can find out about this. Or
and again, it's all about match. Like some people's favorite committee is probably going to be my least favorite committee. It's so
totally
giving. Yeah. You just need a little more information.
All the mysterious things, though, it is one of the things I think is the biggest mysterious thing that, like, even for the whole first 6 months when people are like, I'm like, what is committees? Like, it just was so like, what does that mean exactly? It's not really spelled out for you. And it's just a weird thing.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of just anytime anything needs to be done, a committee's formed on it. So there are a lot of committees. More than I had realized before I started.
Totally. More than we probably know. We'll find out when we're doing this book thing. But we won't,
Yeah, there's probably way more than I know about now.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks. I actually, as usual, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to have to say about this. But then it's actually given me some stuff to think about for sure.
Me too.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. We're delighted to have you as a listener, and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to email us, our address is contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any of your suggestions for future shows or professor quotes that you might want to share with us, or even just things that have come up for you when you were listening to previous episodes. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would love if you would spread the word. So the best way to spread word is by telling people you know if you think they should listen to it, or you can leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.